Traitor! That lightsaber, it belongs to me. Come get it!
What if Finn was the main character in the Star Wars sequel trilogy? This is Fanscription. This what if has been suggested to me multiple times since the release of Rise of Skywalker in December 2019. It narrowly lost a poll on my Twitter to the Back to the Future 4 idea, but since it was so close, I figured I'd still give this one a shot. You can follow me on Twitter to vote in more polls like that one, which I post every so often. A lot's been said about Finn over the last year plus, with even actor John Boyega himself weighing in on the character's treatment across the sequel trilogy. I think a lot of us can agree that Finn had a ton of potential coming out of The Force Awakens, but it didn't seem like the creative team knew what to do with him in the last two movies. It's a shame, because there were ideas thrown out there, especially in Episode 9, where it was obvious this character's journey could have led to someplace very satisfying. But in the end, it was not the most interesting destination. Just the concept of a stormtrooper defecting and becoming a leader in the Resistance is a great starting point. We've seen it done in some form in other Star Wars stories, but never on this scale. If handled correctly, featuring him as the lead in the new films may have been the best case scenario in terms of a character whose motivations are plain to see and easy to connect with. Thus, we'd be on his side and rooting for him right away. Now, this doesn't mean I hated Rey. Like Finn, her story ended up in a place that I didn't like the direction of either, but I actually enjoyed most of her journey in the first two films. It wasn't perfect, but they could have had something unique with her, and I feel like they threw it all away by the last movie. In terms of the potential these two characters had from the start, though, I think Finn could have been the more interesting of the pair. The goal here is to not really fix the films or drastically change the stories they gave us, with maybe the exception of Rise of Skywalker. I'm going to summarize where I would have taken Finn across the events of all three movies, while making some significant story changes along the way. So things will be altered, but recognizable for the most part. Let's start with The Force Awakens. How would it be different if Finn was the clear main character? The whole setup in that film is pretty much perfect for our purposes. We're introduced to Poe Dameron and BB-8 as they receive part of the map that leads to the missing Luke Skywalker. The First Order attacks and we see Kylo Ren for the first time. They then capture Poe, but in the battle, one stormtrooper is shown having a crisis of conscience. We still get that stare down between Kylo and FN-2187, but we'll say Ren was starting to sense something more than just an insubordinate trooper. Things play out the same way with Finn deserting the First Order and fleeing the Star Destroyer with Poe. They're shot down while trying to return to Jakku. Now here is where some changes start. The first is a big one, but necessary, and that deals with Rey. I'm trying to make Finn the true outsider. He's kind of the audience perspective as we catch up with the characters we knew from years ago and what their current situations are. To drive that point home more, I'm going to tie Rey into the foundation of the original characters right from the beginning, and draw a bit from the old Star Wars expanded universe. In our version of the sequel trilogy, Rey is the twin sister of Kylo Ren and daughter of Han Solo and Princess Leia. This will make them even more similar to Jacen and Jaina Solo from what's now referred to as the Legends continuity. Her backstory is wrapped up in Ben Solo's turn to the dark side. Not only did it split apart Han and Leia as Luke exiled himself, but Rey went her separate way as well. She hasn't had anything to do with the New Republic or the Resistance since, and is on Jakku trying to track down the missing Millennium Falcon, which she initially took when her family splintered. This version of Rey also never developed her Force powers. She wasn't nearly as innately gifted as her brother, and was a more rebellious spirit. Seeing that she couldn't compete with her brother in that area, she developed other skills, like being one of the best young pilots in the New Republic, and is very comfortable with a blaster rather than a lightsaber. In short, she's much more Solo than Skywalker. While Rey is somewhat Force-sensitive, whatever potential that laid within pretty much died on the vine. In terms of her involvement in the events of The Force Awakens, not much has to change. She can still find BB-8, get involved with Finn, and finally track down the Falcon from Unkar Plutt. They escape the First Order attack and eventually end up being found by Han Solo. That scene would take on a different tone as more of a reluctant reunion, but the basics are the same. This is also where Finn would find out who she is. With not as much of a need to build up Rey, it frees up some runtime for expanding Finn's character. There's no need to have him play up the lie about being part of the Resistance for as long as he did. Instead, we get somewhat of a somber scene where he recounts his tragic backstory to the Solos. Those lines that were used later in the original film would fit perfectly here.
Like all of them, I was taken from a family I'll never know and raised to do one thing. But my first battle, I made a choice. I wasn't gonna kill for them. So I ran. I was ashamed of what I was. But I'm done with the First Order. I'm never going back.
Finn and Rey immediately share a connection. The pair grows closer as they share more details on their backgrounds. Things play out the same way from here, with the Solos and Finn going to Maz Kanata's. She agrees to help, but first brings the trio into the lower level of her place. There, she shows them a new find she recently bought off a scavenger from Bespin. The fool didn't know what he had, she says. It's Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Han and Rey are shocked, but Finn has a different reaction. He becomes a bit disoriented and begins to hear faint whispers. It's not the first time this phenomenon has happened to him, but it seems more potent than usual. Before the conversation gets too far, a quake hits the building. Everyone goes outside to see the red blast from Starkiller Base destroy the New Republic's capital system of planets. The First Order then arrives and attacks. In the madness, the lightsaber rolls to Finn, who picks it up to defend himself. When he touches the saber, he sees a vision similar to Rey's in the original film, specifically Luke and Vader's fight on Cloud City. Snapping out of it, he's confused, but with no time to decipher what just happened, he battles an advancing stormtrooper. Like in the movie, Rey is captured by Kylo, and the First Order retreats when the Resistance arrives. Han and Leia, as well as Poe, BB-8, and Finn, also reunite. That interrogation scene with Kylo and Rey takes on a new meaning here. The twins have an intense back and forth. Rey is defiant while scolding her brother for his turn to the dark side and destruction of their family. Still looking for the location of Luke, Kylo knows Rey has seen BB-8's map and tries his information extraction technique, but his sister is able to resist it. From here, things play out the same way as in the film, except Rey uses her wits and tech knowledge to free herself from her restraints instead of the Force. Han and Finn lead the charge to rescue her, and all this still culminates in the death of the Elder Solo. As the planet is being destroyed by the Resistance, the confrontation in the forest with Kylo, Rey, and Finn happens a little differently. Ren takes out his infuriated and overzealous sister quickly, leaving Finn to battle Snoke's apprentice with the Skywalker lightsaber. Kylo is angered further by the sight of a traitor holding his family's legacy, and the two battle. Ren senses the power within Finn and makes the same offering he did to Rey in the original film.
You need a teacher! I could show you the ways of the Force!
Something awakens inside the former trooper, and with the emotion of Rey's injured condition, the death of Han, and most importantly, the awful life he was forced to lead with the First Order, Finn goes on the heavy offensive, besting Ren before the rupturing planet fractures them apart. Remember, this wasn't Kylo at his best. He was shot by Chewie's blaster, an emotional wreck from killing Han, and Finn isn't exactly a slouch. He was trained for combat from when he was a boy and was supposedly a standout in that area. This shouldn't come off as unbelievable. Before the planet explodes, Chewie arrives in the Falcon to save Finn and Rey. We then have a similar ending with the duo's positions flipped. The young Solo is seriously injured and recovering. Finn volunteers to go to Luke's location after R2-D2 comes out of low power mode to complete BB-8's map. He's looking for someone who can help him with his exponentially emerging abilities, and Leia agrees. Luke's made it clear he doesn't want to talk to any of his old friends or family, so who better to try and convince him that the tide is turning than a former stormtrooper who defected to the right cause. Finn leaves in the Falcon with Chewie and R2. Soon after, they appear on Ahch-To to find Luke Skywalker. His father's lightsaber is brandished toward him as the film ends. My plan for The Last Jedi will hit some of the same beats as the original, but I'll be making notable alterations to it. Basically, I'm gonna Godfather 2 this thing. half of the movie will be flashbacks, while the other half takes place in the present. The flashbacks will show key moments in the fall of Ben Solo to the dark side. We'll see some background on Snoke, Luke's Jedi Academy, Rey's relationship with her brother, and that elusive scene we never got with Han, Luke, and Leia. The present scenes will focus on Finn's training with Luke, Rey and Leia dealing with Han's death, and the First Order searching for the Resistance's new base. A lot will be said by the juxtaposition of the flashbacks with Ben and Finn's training, how similar but very different they are from Luke's perspective. The movie will open with a younger Luke Skywalker teaching a lesson on meditation to an 8-year-old Ben and Rey Solo. Rey is very impatient, as her brother is clearly a natural. The twins start arguing when it's broken up by their father, Han, entering the room. We hard cut to Han's death in the last film, which immediately triggers Rey to wake up in the present. She's inside a healing chamber at the Resistance base. Through her point of view, we see that the base is under attack by the First Order. Madness and confusion engulf every direction she looks in. Rey's able to find her mother Leia, as ships are loaded with people trying to escape the onslaught. Poe Dameron leads a defense team to buy the Resistance time as they get as many people out as possible. This is our big opening space battle. I'm cutting the whole feud Dameron had with Leia and Holdo. Poe gets to be an unconventional hero and leader without sacrificing a bunch of his comrades. Eventually, most of the Resistance is able to flee from the attack through hyperspace. We cut to a flashback of Luke training Ben with a lightsaber for the first time. Again, he catches on quickly as his uncle looks on with pride. A match cut then shows present-day Luke on Ahch-To. A look of grim confusion turns to apathy when Finn approaches him with Anakin's lightsaber. The haggard Jedi walks away before Finn can hand it to him. I'm going to keep most of Luke's attitude the same, but we'll get a better understanding of why he ended up that way through the flashbacks. Like Rey in the actual film, Finn has a similar determination to discover more about his abilities and, along with Chewie and R2, continuously tries to entice Skywalker to return and help the Resistance. Kylo Ren is reprimanded by Snoke for his failure on Starkiller Base. This leads to a flashback of Snoke's first attempts to bring Ben Solo to the dark side. Snoke's full origin can be kept vague enough, but I drop hints, like his detailed knowledge of the fall of the Jedi Temple during the Clone Wars, and other events that could lead one to speculate where he really comes from. Maybe he's a former young Jedi who was scarred in the attack on the Temple. Maybe he's a failed apprentice to Palpatine, or something even older. All this is only hinted at. A full history of Snoke would likely be explored in a comic, book, series, or spin-off film, as his origins aren't necessarily essential to this trilogy. The preceding flashback with Ben and Luke would once again lead to the present, where Finn continues to pursue training from Skywalker. He's able to tell Luke of his history with the First Order and all the unexplainable events that have happened to him throughout his life that rose to the surface in his fight with Kylo Ren. As Rey put it in the film,
"Something inside me has always been there, but now it's awake. I don't know what it is, or what to do with it, and I need help."
Luke reluctantly gives in to training the persistent Finn, but only to prove why the Jedi Order should stay dead. Back on the Resistance cruiser, Rey has been isolated, unable to rid her mind of the image of her brother killing their father. Her arguments with Leia over how to proceed haven't gone anywhere, since the General still hopes there's good left in Ben. Disagreeing completely, Rey is left with a desperate desire for revenge. Back on Ahch-To, Luke gives the same lesson from the film to Finn, explaining the basics of what the Force is. Finn is shown to have immense untapped potential, but he's been through a lot of darkness in his life. This has shaped him into someone with plenty of fear and anger held inside. He's drawn to the dark side the same way the movie version of Rey was, and when Luke sees this, he's understandably taken aback.
"I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now."
We flash back to the first signs of Ben's turn to the dark when Luke was training him. That new Jedi Temple is shown at the height of its relevance, and this is where we finally have the scene with Han, Luke, and Leia. They're discussing how Leia and Luke have been sensing Ben's flirtation away from the light. They're unsure how to move forward, but all seem disappointed and a bit worried. Ben is shown listening close by, out of sight. Upset and angry they're all talking about him behind his back, he storms off undetected. A pensive General Leia looks out into space from the Star Cruiser. She's informed by Poe that her notion was approved by the rest of High Command. All of the remaining Resistance ships are heading to the planet Crait to regroup. There's an old Rebel base there, and hopefully enough weapons to protect themselves from a future attack. The General acknowledges the news, but is worried about her daughter, as Leia senses the hatred growing in Rey's heart. She divulges this worry to Poe as the cruiser makes its way to Crait. On Ahch-To, Finn follows Luke to the ancient Jedi Temple. Skywalker explains his reasons for why the Jedi need to end and why his personal failure has led to the galaxy's current plight. This is where we get the flashback that's in the actual film. Luke and Ben's confrontation leads to the destruction of the small academy. Finn is adamant that he's nothing like Kylo. They don't have the same experiences or come from the same background at all. An obvious determination is present inside Finn to make up for the sins put upon him by the First Order. It's an altruistic goal, as he wants to use his abilities to not only take down the remnant of the Empire, but also help others trapped inside their ranks who want to escape. However, this determination can easily be turned in the wrong direction, and with Finn's raw power, Luke does not want to repeat the same mistake he made with his nephew. On the Supremacy, General Hux is shown informing Captain Phasma that they've tracked the Resistance to Crait through the activation of old tech at the Rebel base. He gives orders to ready her troops. She sternly delivers these orders to her stormtroopers, but one questions her. Phasma commands her to remove her helmet. This is where we're introduced to the Jannah character. Since Finn's escape, some of the troopers have been a bit harder to control, Jannah being an example. Phasma humiliates her in front of her battalion and sends her off to aggressive reconditioning, threatening anyone else who exhibits the same insubordinance with even worse treatment. On Crait, the Resistance is setting up shop, unaware that they're leading the First Order directly to them. Leia looks out onto the planet's stark surface as Rey pulls out a pair of dice that Han gave her long ago. She flashes back to a scene where she finally bested her brother in a flight simulator. Despite Ben's superiority with the Force, Rey always had a knack for flying that her father was eager to acknowledge. We see him hand her the dice for the first time, and explain that he used to keep them hung up in the cockpit of the Falcon. Back in the present, Rey wipes away a tear and walks off. That night on Ahch-To, Finn is led to the Darkside Cave, where he goes through a trial, confronting the family he never knew, the evil he served, and what he could have become. He sees visions of Phasma, Kylo Ren, and a dark side version of himself dressed as a First Order officer. Blocking out whispers that he's just as bad as those he used to serve, Finn is able to overcome that self-doubt stronger than he was before. Upon leaving the cave, he's hit with a premonition of the First Order's next planned attack. Finn can especially feel that Rey is in grave danger if he doesn't go to her now. Much like how Luke was drawn to help Han and Leia in The Empire Strikes Back, Skywalker warns Finn that he's nowhere near ready to take on Snoke, much less Kylo Ren. When challenged to join the fight, Luke still refuses. He explains what Finn is feeling and that these visions may not come to pass. But when he steps in the way of letting the former stormtrooper leave, Finn knocks Luke off his feet. He stands over him with the Skywalker lightsaber and asks Luke for help one last time. Luke simply looks away, as we cut to Finn flying off with Chewie and R2 in the Millennium Falcon. Next, we have the scene with Force Ghost Yoda, as that message still applies.
Luke, we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.
The First Order arrives above Crait as Snoke sits in his throne room looking on. Kylo Ren stands in front of him.
Your mother and sister hide behind the walls of that decaying rebel base. Can I trust you to finish the job?
Yes, Master.
Make sure of it, because if Ben Solo lives, Kylo Ren dies.
The Resistance is made aware of the First Order's occupation above the planet, and while surprised, they launch a defensive strike led again by Poe Dameron. Rey joins the fight in an X-Wing as we have a second major battle. During the fight, the Millennium Falcon swoops in with Finn on the guns, taking down a few TIE fighters. Chewie drops off Finn outside the base just before the door is closed. He reunites with Leia, but has to relay the news that Luke wouldn't come back with him. Similar to the film, the Resistance is beaten back, but the base door remains impenetrable. That's when the battering ram cannon is brought out, which Finn identifies. He can sense Kylo Ren is outside and is hoping he and Anakin's lightsaber will be enough to distract him while the Resistance escapes. Leia doesn't like this plan, but with no allies responding, a better idea is not presented. That's when everyone is stopped by the arrival of Luke Skywalker. After talking to Leia, he tells Finn he'll get his chance to be a hero later. Luke will be confronting the First Order alone. With everyone in awe of his presence, none of the Resistance questions the Jedi as he steps outside. After ordering his forces to unload their firepower, Kylo is shocked to see his uncles still standing. He then steps outside himself, as we get a lot of the same dialogue from the movie. But before they engage in battle, another ship arrives and Snoke emerges from it. He dismisses Kylo and postures to Luke, bragging and monologuing a bit. In short, he's heavily distracted. After a blast of Force lightning leaves Luke unharmed, Kylo stabs the incredulous Snoke in the back. Shocked for only a moment, Snoke literally dies laughing as he looks into Ren's hateful eyes.
Kylo Ren lives!
Hux and his army position themselves to strike Kylo down, but the Supreme Leader waves them off. Snoke looks to Luke, dying with an elated expression that screams, "I've won." Then we get the big almost fight with Kylo and Luke and see that Skywalker was force projecting as the dwindled numbers of the Resistance escape. Finn uses the Force to move those rocks blocking their exit. On Ahch-To, Luke is heavily exhausted and faints, but does not die.
See you around, kid.
We'll make that actually mean something this time. Ren is furious as he looks to the First Order. Snoke's final signal to his army seemed to condone Kylo's actions, as everyone, including a reluctant Hux, acknowledges him as the new Supreme Leader. On the Millennium Falcon, Finn is shown to have the Jedi texts, as Leia realizes Rey is nowhere to be found. We then see her in hyperspace. Inside the X-Wing, she hangs up the dice her father gave her and looks forward with a vengeful stare. News of the battle gets back to the stormtroopers on the Supremacy, where Jannah, just exiting a harmful reconditioning session, smiles upon hearing another Finn story. He's becoming something of an icon among a growing group of troopers. We then cut to the kids playing with the homemade toys, reenacting Luke's confrontation with the First Order. The rumor going around is that he killed Snoke. Finn and Luke are meant to represent hope for different people, even some behind enemy lines. The film ends on that optimistic note for the future. This film has a lot of baggage attached to it. I'm sure some people enjoyed themselves, and if you did, that's totally okay. Don't let other people ruin stuff you like. But I think a lot of folks, myself included, were hoping for something a little different, or at the very least consistent with the previous two films. Last Jedi changed things pretty radically, but instead of trying to build on that, Rise of Skywalker felt like it was undoing what was already undone. Then you throw Palpatine in there, and it's just kind of a mess. Admittedly, I do like a few things, but I'm pretty much blowing up most of this story while trying to retain some of the framework. We'll keep the year time gap between this and Last Jedi. We open with Rey incognito on the seedy planet of Kijimi. She's looking for someone named Zorii Bliss, and finds her in the basement of a nightclub. Rey's been searching for a year and run through every contact she's ever had. They all point to Zorii as the only person capable of gaining access to the First Order's flagship. The price is steep, and there's a catch. The only way to get on board is through a ship that Zorii and her small crew have access to. Rey will have to hire the whole crew if she wants in, which will cost extra. Solo says that money is no object, and pays half now, with plans to pay the other half later. Zorii agrees, and they start planning. Poe Dameron, Chewie, and BB-8 are then shown getting information from an ally in the glacier of an unknown planet. Supposedly, there's a mole in the First Order. It's not long before TIE fighters attack, and the Falcon has to make a getaway in spectacular fashion. We cut to Finn, training with a re-energized Luke Skywalker. Not long after the Battle of Crait, Luke raised his X-Wing out of the waters of Ahch-To and joined the Resistance in person. Finn has made immense progress in a year, and while Luke is still hard on him, it's for the right reasons. Leia looks on with approval as Finn passes another one of Luke's training exercises. The Resistance's new base is on the tropical moon of Agen Kloss. They've been able to rebuild a bit after the events of the last film, as more people have flocked to their cause. The Millennium Falcon lands looking a bit worse for wear as Poe and Chewie reconvene with the group. He explains to the Resistance that there is indeed a spy within the First Order. After decoding the message, they found out that Kylo Ren is in search of an ancient Jedi temple said to contain the power to alter reality. The location of this temple is unknown, but Ren has been traversing the galaxy in search of clues to its whereabouts. The First Order has already gained a lot of ground over the last year with their unopposed conquest of several influential worlds, but as Supreme Leader, Ren has become obsessed with gaining more power. With his Uncle Luke still out there and Finn's light quickly rising to meet his darkness, Kylo's become paranoid. Searching through the treasure trove of ancient artifacts and writings kept by Snoke, he found a legend that kept recurring, even in the oldest texts. It told of a temple where time itself could be manipulated by a powerful Force user. When Luke hears Poe deliver this news, the blood drains from his face. He steps away to retrieve one of the Jedi texts as Finn and Leia follow him. Skywalker starts nervously speaking of the one spot in the known galaxy where the Force itself converges. Myths and legends have recounted it for thousands of years. There are even rumors that the Empire tried to gain access to it not long before the first Death Star was destroyed. He flips through the pages until he happens upon an illustration of 3 divine figures. The text is then turned to Finn and Leia, who inspect the drawings. Luke says this place has been described as a world between worlds. With most Imperial archives destroyed, there's no record of the Galactic Empire's knowledge of this Jedi temple. Therefore, Kylo is solely reliant on the archaic writings Snoke discovered. They speak of a Jedi holocron that was stolen and corrupted by the Sith long ago. It may contain the location of the world between worlds, but dark-side users were never able to unlock its secrets. The last known whereabouts of the holocron were at the long-abandoned Dark Temple on the planet Dromund Kaas, a capital of the old Sith Empire. Dromund Kaas is not easily tracked down, so it takes a while for the First Order to discover its position. Meanwhile, we see Rey and Zorii approach the Supremacy on a stolen First Order vessel. Zori's small crew is made up of 2 other members, Babu Frick and DJ, the Benicio del Toro character from The Last Jedi. This will be the first time we're seeing these 2 characters in our version of the trilogy. Zorii uses her captain's medallion, which gets the ship inside without a problem. Rey is wearing a stormtrooper uniform and exits the craft. With a believable enough backstory from the crew, the ship is able to leave without incident. Rey then blends into the sea of white armor and begins covertly searching for Kylo Ren. The Supreme Leader is shown sensing a disturbance, but is preoccupied as the Supremacy enters hyperspace. We cut to Luke loading up his X-Wing as he argues with Leia, Finn, Poe, and Chewie about his insistence of going to confront Kylo alone on Dromund Kaas. Similarly to Ren, he found a clue of the corrupted holocron's location in one of the old Jedi texts. Skywalker thinks it's too dangerous for anyone else to go, as the Dark Temple is filled with unspeakable evil and too dangerous for non-Force users to enter. He thinks there may be a chance to talk some sense into Ben, since this pursuit is beyond his nephew's understanding. With Leia needing to command from the base, a large fleet attracting too much attention, and Finn the last hope for the Jedi if he doesn't make it back, Luke is adamant that he go by himself. But in a quiet scene removed from the group, Leia appeals to Luke's guilt and refuses to see her brother go off alone when she just got him back. They've also both sensed a disturbance regarding Rey's involvement in the situation. Like it or not, the Jedi Master is going to need backup, so he agrees to use the Falcon and bring Finn, Chewie, and Poe. A group that small will still have a good chance of moving in undetected. Most of the other higher-ranking Resistance fighters are out on separate missions trying to recruit unconquered worlds to their side, so there won't be much of an opportunity for help if the group is discovered by the enemy. We cut to Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer landing on Dromund Kaas. He exits. Behind him, a ship opens with Captain Phasma and about 24 stormtroopers following. We're able to recognize that Rey is among them. The Millennium Falcon exits hyperspace above the planet and lands undetected, but close enough to the First Order's pair of flyers. Finn mentions to Luke that he feels strange. Something here is affecting him. Skywalker explains that the whole planet beams with dark side energy. It scrambles any user's connection to the Force, light or dark. Ren and his team approach the massive, dilapidated Dark Temple. It's as impressive as it is terrifying. The Supreme Leader is sweating bullets, but his desperation for more power spurs him forward. He takes a few steps toward the Gothic structure when a loud blast is heard. We see Kylo's face tense up, as if he's straining. He turns around as we see a laser blast hovering in midair. Ren looks at it for a moment before letting it go. Sparks fly when the laser hits the outside of the stone temple. Kylo Ren and the stormtroopers look back to see one of their own standing a few feet behind them, a blaster pointed in their Supreme Leader's direction. The angry, tearful face of Rey Solo stands exposed in the aftermath of an attempt to kill her brother. Phasma orders her troops to fire upon the imposter, but Kylo stops her.
Wait!
They all look to Ren. His face doesn't seem as confident as usual. It's almost as if a nervous doubt has entered his mind.
Detain her. I'll deal with her later.
The troopers knock the weapon from Rey's hands and cuff her, as an almost hesitant Kylo Ren turns from his sister and enters the temple. With Ren out of sight, Phasma strikes Rey's defiant face with her baton. It draws blood from her lip.
Look at you, scum. Just like your father.
Rebel scum.
Phasma and the troopers turn to see Finn standing behind them. They all aim their blasters at him.
FN 2187. Couldn't stay away, I see.
Release her.
Or what? You're outnumbered, traitor.
No. You're wrong. We're on the same side.
What?
Finn gestures to individual troopers in the 24 at Phasma's command.
You. All of you. They stole you from your homes, from your families, friends you never knew, lives you'll never live. They took away your name and gave you a number, put a gun in your hand and forced you to fight their war, their enemies. I know, because they did the same thing to me. We are the same. And if there's one thing I know for sure in this galaxy, is that you deserve more. You deserve a choice. Phasma, the First Order, they think they can control you. You're nothing to them but a warm body to do their dirty work until you're dead and replaced. I'm not telling you to join anything or serve anyone. All I want for you is to have a choice.
Are you finished? Troopers, fire.
There's an awkward silence.
I said fire!
One of the stormtroopers removes her helmet to reveal the scarred face of Janna. Her helmet drops to the ground, and she intently walks over to Finn, standing beside him. Slowly, every trooper there does the exact same thing. The ones holding Rey even escort her to Finn's side. Poe and Chewie step out of hiding to join the group. Phasma is furious.
You treacherous dogs! Get back here!
They all turn their backs to her and start walking in the opposite direction. Phasma then lets out an incensed, violent scream. She charges at Finn's back with her sharpened baton. With great speed, Finn ignites Anakin's lightsaber and turns around to meet her, piercing her armor and midsection. They're face to face with the blue hue underlighting them.
One more thing. My name is Finn.
He switches off the saber as Phasma falls, dead. The troopers and Rey are welcomed by Poe and Chewie as Finn looks up from Phasma's corpse to see Luke's cloak enter the temple. Gargantuan statues line massive, dimly lit hallways leading to the immense central chamber. Kylo is uneasy, as the haunting interior seems aware of his presence. He comes upon the main structure and opens it to see a collection of dark-side antiquities. Among them is the corrupted Jedi holocron. He raises it close to his face and can feel a mix of both sides of the Force emanating from it.
Ben!
Just as his father once called to him before his death, Ren's uncle Luke now stands in a similar position. He turns to see the aged Skywalker.
Is it really you this time?
Give me the holocron, Ben.
Han Solo couldn't stop me. You can't either, old man.
You don't know what you're doing.
This place you're looking for, it can destroy the entire galaxy.
No. What I plan to do will bring order back to the galaxy, in a way the First Order could only dream. Grandfather was the most powerful being this galaxy has ever seen. People feared the mere mention of his name, but you exploited his weakness. You were his weakness. I'm going to save him from himself. I'm going to save him from you. And the best part is you're gonna help me do it.
Luke's expression turns from perplexity to anger. He quickly extends his arm, and with the Force, pulls the holocron toward him, but Kylo is able to stop it halfway to its destination. The stone walls of the Dark Temple start to crack as the immense power of both men reverberate around them. This is when Finn enters to see what's playing out. He tries to get involved, but is pushed back by the growing energy. The holocron starts vibrating, and after a final pull from both sides, it twists and opens with an explosion of power. This sends Luke, Kylo, and Finn several dozen feet backward. Ren and Skywalker hit the stone walls behind them, but it's Luke who takes the worst of it, knocking his head directly on the dense surface, rendering him unconscious. Kylo is hurt, but able to stand, while unbeknownst to Ren, Finn lay buried under the remains of a crumbled statue. The combination of dark and light side force power was able to unlock the unlockable holocron, as the large space is illuminated in green. Kylo tries to discern what he sees until he figures it out. It's a map. Highlighted brighter than the surrounding area is the location of the Jedi Temple he's been looking for. The temple that leads to the world between worlds. Exhausted but determined, he recognizes the highlighted area.
Lothal.
He picks up and closes the holocron, limping to his uncle, who's knocked out cold. The explosion blew a hole in the wall, which Kylo carries Luke out of. When we get outside, we see that First Order reinforcements have arrived. A few stormtroopers take Luke's body onto a ship as Kylo refuses their help. He has enough strength to look back at the temple and give an order.
Destroy it.
They board the ship just as Finn is able to move the fallen rocks from on top of him. We hear an energy cannon outside charging as Finn realizes what's going on. He sprints back toward the entrance and is able to get outside just before blasts from a First Order ship start blowing up the temple. He's saved from falling debris by Janna and another stormtrooper he turned as they rush to the ship Phasma was brought in on. Above, the Millennium Falcon fights off First Order attackers, and the Resistance all escape just before the Dark Temple completely crumbles, engulfing the large area around it. They then fly out into hyperspace before the First Order ships can take them down. From here, we build up to the climax on Lothal. Finn was able to overhear Kylo repeat the location of the Jedi Temple and inform the rest of the Resistance upon returning to Ajan Claws. Leia is given extra motivation when she's told the First Order has Luke for some unknown purpose. This is it, an all-out assault on the enemy. They know where and when the big guns are going to be. The Resistance fighters on missions to recruit more planets to their cause are all called back. This is their best shot at taking out the First Order, so they need all hands on deck. The night before the battle, Rey and Finn share an intimate scene where they fully catch up and reflect on the ride they've been on since meeting each other on Jakku. They've inspired each other in different ways, and they've grown even closer after the incident on Dromund Kaas. Rey is tasked with leading a certain group of flyers coming in to help the Resistance, while Finn will be leading the assault on the ground. The hope is to get Luke back and stop Kylo before breaching the Jedi Temple. The obvious romantic chemistry between Rey and Finn end in a kiss before they go their separate ways. The next day on the Supremacy, we see Kylo look upon his uncle, still knocked out, in a stasis pod. The First Order has been keeping him under. A look of sympathy and inner conflict by Ren is interrupted by an officer. They've arrived at Lothal. Kylo is escorted to the location of the Jedi Temple by a full company of stormtroopers, Luke in a mobile stasis pod next to him. Loth wolves are visible in the distance as we see a vast plain of nothingness ahead of the group.
We must have the wrong coordinates.
No, it's here.
The fog splits to reveal a large symbol in the ground. Kylo puts his hand on it and concentrates. The ground begins violently shaking until a wide monolith rises from the cracked earth. It features a painting of who are referred to as the Father, the Daughter, and the Son, aka the Mortis gods. It's the same three figures we saw in the Jedi text earlier. Luke is taken out of the pod and held up by 2 stormtroopers. They place his hand on the painting of the daughters. Kylo uses the Force to keep him in place.
A master and an apprentice.
He places his closed fist on that of the son's, and the painting lights up in a bright gold hue. A circular ring is formed in the center of the monolith, just as blaster fire from above rains down. It's the Resistance. We cut to the First Order doing battle with them above the planet as Poe Dameron leads the attack in the sky. Leia and High Command watch from the large cruiser as they get the jump on a few Star Destroyers. The demoted former General Hux is shown taking the opportunity to get in an escape pod and head for Lothal. On the surface, stormtroopers defend their supreme leader from blaster fire as Luke is shown face down on the ground, still KO'd. Through the fog, we then see a small group of stormtroopers led by Finn and his blue-bladed lightsaber. Those troopers now have customized armor with different designs on the plates. All of them share 3 red lines across the front of their helmets in solidarity with their leader. Surrounded by other Resistance ground forces, they're able to advance quickly. Finn and Kylo lock eyes, but Finn is distracted by several troopers before he gets too close. At this point, Luke is stirring. He gets up just in time to see his nephew leap into the monolith portal. Before he can go in after him, he starts fending off the massive amount of stormtroopers surrounding the area. We cut to inside the black void that is the world between worlds. Kylo Ren is in awe of the enormous space where white-lined bridges lead to an endless amount of different shaped portals. Immediately, he starts hearing whispers. Some are recognizable, others are not. Kylo makes his way across the center to a portal on the other side. It starts to show the moment he and Luke first crossed blades as enemies. When Ben Solo brings down the hut on top of his uncle, Ren turns away in disgust, and the moment fades from view. Outside, we see Hux's escape pod land. He stumbles out of it, surrounded by Resistance fighters. About to be shot, he explains he was the spy from inside the First Order, feeding information to the other side. They're reluctant to believe him, but end up taking him away to a nearby ship. By the monolith, Luke has finally taken out enough troopers to jump into the portal. Finn sees this from further away and starts advancing toward the area faster. Inside the world between worlds, Luke goes through a similar experience to Kylo, hearing voices and seeing the same vision his nephew did. He starts hearing something more prominent in the distance and follows the voices to see Kylo in front of a portal showing the battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader from the end of The Empire Strikes Back. Kylo is so fixated that he doesn't notice Luke behind him. The Jedi Master sees that Ren has his lightsaber hanging off his belt, and just when Kylo begins to reach forward to the portal, Luke is able to pull the saber toward him and ignite it. Kylo reacts quickly as uncle and nephew cross blades once again. In space surrounding Lothal, the early advantage has waned. The First Order starts to gain an upper hand against the Resistance. Poe is doing his best to keep everyone in formation, but things aren't looking good. General Leia sees the peril her pilots are in and tries calling for some evasive maneuvers. In the battle zone on the surface, Finn decides to make a dash for the portal. He leaps over groups of fighting soldiers and takes out a few enemies before finally diving headfirst into the monolith opening. A few troopers try to follow him but are unable to enter. Once inside, Finn is almost overwhelmed by voices just prior to seeing Luke and Kylo dueling above him. He jumps into the fray, and what follows is a full-on epic lightsaber battle. All 3 men jump from bridge to bridge as the realm they occupy starts reacting. Moments from the entire Star Wars saga start showing up in all the portals surrounding the fight. The sounds of those moments fill the void and combine with a monumental John Williams musical score to harmonize with the lightsabers clashing. This is meant to be the big signature sequence of the new trilogy. Kylo is just barely holding his own, but takes advantage of Finn's inexperience by force pushing him off one of the higher bridges. He takes a rough landing and struggles to recover. Luke and Ren continue to fight until a loud sound grabs Skywalker's attention. It's the familiar breathing of Darth Vader. That tiny moment of hesitation is all Kylo needs as he slices off his uncle's robotic hand. The appendage, along with Luke's lightsaber, fall into the endless black abyss below them. With Skywalker at his mercy, Ren raises his crimson blade for a killing strike, but stops when he sees another opportunity to pull Darth Vader into the realm. He jumps to the portal, once again playing the moment in time where Vader is battling Luke on Cloud City. There's a lull in the fight where Kylo apprehensively begins reaching out to his grandfather. We cut to the space battle where things look extremely dire for the Resistance. The cruiser containing Leia and High Command is about to be fired upon when an X-Wing arrives out of hyperspace and blasts the attackers. It's Rey. Poe and the rest of the surviving flyers are happy to see that she's not alone. Similar to Rise of Skywalker, but on a bit of a smaller scale, backup has arrived. Ships from worlds all over the galaxy join the fight. This is where we see Lando flying the Falcon with Chewie. They're leading ships piloted by Zori and Babu Frick, Wedge Antilles, Hera Syndulla, and many more. They all get their moment as the tide turns against the First Order. The battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back is shown from a different angle. Just after Luke falls out of the open window, heavy wind blows as the air pressure is released. Vader steps forward to look out of the gaping hole in the wall when he hears a faint whisper in the background. His head snaps behind him, but no one is there. The whisper is heard again.
Grandfather.
But this time, the space in front of Vader begins to slightly warp. He can vaguely sense this disturbance in the Force. It feels foreign to him, though somehow familiar. He reaches out his hand as it inches closer to this unexplainable manifestation. Inside the world between worlds, Kylo's hand reaches out to grab Vader's, but when they're about to touch, Finn leaps in to stop him. The warped reality that Vader was reaching for quickly dissipates. Confused but still focused, his attention shifts to his son recovering in the reactor shaft, as the Sith Lord must return to the business at hand. The two protégés of Luke Skywalker are dueling one-on-one. Finn's tenacity matches Kylo's experience. They lock in a stalemate that has neither man yielding.
You have no place in this story. You come from nothing. You're nothing!
I know who I am. Do you?
They unlock and engage in one more flurry. Finn pulls out all the stops, executing maneuvers he's never tried before. Backflipping to avoid a wild strike, he knocks Kylo's lightsaber from his hands. Just as Finn lands, he throws his saber forward where it strikes Ren through the abdomen. Kylo drops to his knees before Finn uses the Force to pull the blue blade back to him. His eyes immediately turn to Luke, who still lies on the ground. Back in space, Rey and Poe lead a final attack on the First Order. They take down the last of the Star Destroyers as the Resistance and their allies celebrate. Some of them begin the descent to Lothal's surface. The world between worlds and the battle within it seem to be affecting Skywalker. It's like Luke is physically suffering from all his past trauma. He's living every feeling he's ever had and more all over again at the same time.
You can't stay here, Finn. You won't be able to leave.
I'm not going without you.
Listen to me. I was wrong to stay on that island, afraid to face my own mistakes. My family is responsible for so much darkness in the galaxy, but you're proof that good can still come out of that darkness. You brought me back, and you've already saved me, son. 1,000 generations live in you now. Go. Hurry!
A crack appears in the portal they came in through. Finn reluctantly listens to his master and sprints for it. Similar cracks start appearing in other portals as well. It's as if Luke is holding the place together. Finn takes one last look at the realm and sees the dying Kylo Ren kneeling in front of a portal. Finn jumps out just in time as that gateway crumbles. We see that Kylo is watching a moment from Rey's flashbacks in the last film. He and his sister are children, happily together with Han and Leia. This memory of a peaceful time brings a single tear to Ben Solo's eye. He then slowly falls off the platform into the endless abyss underneath. Finn tumbles out of the monolith opening that cracks right after his exit. The damaged mural of the Mortis gods loses all its power and becomes dull and lifeless. The Jedi looks around to see the remaining stormtroopers rounded up. The Resistance has won as they all rejoice in the defeat of the First Order. We cut to some of the Resistance stormtroopers bringing the former General Hux to Leia. She thanks him for his information. Without it, they wouldn't have won. He responds by indignantly stating,
I don't care that you won. I needed Kylo Ren to lose.
He's taken away, just as Finn joins Rey, Poe, Chewie, and the rest of the recognizable heroes. He informs them of Luke and Kylo's fate, then tries to give Leia Luke's lightsaber. But she immediately gives it back. mentioning that even though Luke is gone, there must always be a Skywalker fighting for good in the galaxy. Sometime later, Finn and Rey visit the remains of the Jedi Temple alone. They say a few poignant words before Finn notices something strange in the painting on the monolith. In addition to the father, daughter, and son, there seems to now be a fourth figure among them. That figure bears a striking resemblance to Luke Skywalker. Rey and Finn hold each other close and smile. Oh boy, there you go. I may have gone a little more detailed than I wanted to initially, but with Finn as the lead and my desire to change the trajectory of the trilogy, things just kept expanding. I think this version creates a distinctive main hero in Finn, a new motivation and background for Rey, a more tragic take on the story of Kylo Ren, and a more involved role for Luke. I borrowed a lot of elements from different Star Wars stories like the Dark Temple from the Mysteries of the Sith and Knights of the Old Republic video games, and the World Between Worlds from the Rebels animated series. I thought the threat of time travel was enough of a payoff without really having to go through with it, although one could say that Kylo affected the past when reaching out to Vader. Perhaps when Kylo thought he was communing with his grandfather's charred helmet, he was somehow really hearing him across time and space, as Vader would sometimes search the Force for that same presence he felt on Cloud City. But that's more of a suggestion that you could fill in the blanks on if you wanted to. Exploring the mystical side of the Force and basically making Luke a god at the end of this felt appropriate. Plus, we feature a big old epic lightsaber fight that involves him in the climax. I like the idea of him and Finn learning from and motivating each other in the last two films. They mean different things to different people. Finn brought some good out of the First Order, and the legend of Luke Skywalker once again brought hope to the galaxy at large. With Rey still playing a big but mostly separate role across the three films, I think we'd have enough story to go around to fill up a new trilogy. But what do you think? How would you have changed the Star Wars sequels? Let us know in the comments. Also, make sure you check out the Fanscription podcast feed for audio versions of all our episodes. Until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.